Watching become a god. Watch people's heads roll.
Welcome to the Anarchist Post. Today we're going to be taking a look at the 13th Amendment and how the Constitution never made any of the black slaves free. It only made the whites slaves. Let's take a look at it. Alright, the 13th Amendment to the Constitution states, "Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for crime, whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States, or any place subject to their jurisdiction." So, what the Constitution is saying right here, very plain and clear, is nobody's allowed to have a slave. Unless, of course, the slave master is United States government and you're convicted of a crime. Then they can have a slave. But nobody else is allowed to have a slave. So it wasn't an abolishment of slaves. It was abolishment of any other slave masters except your government slave master. So your 13th Amendment cannot be understood by itself. In order to understand the 13th Amendment, you have to understand the 14th Amendment, and vice versa. In order to understand what's going on with the 14th Amendment, you have to understand the 13th Amendment, because they were made in conjunction with each other. So let's look at what Google has to say about the 14th Amendment. It says, "The amendment addresses citizenship rights and equal protection of the laws, and were proposed in response to issues related to former slaves following the American Civil War." So the reason for the 14th Amendment was because they were trying to figure out, and this is not some crazy conspiracy theory saying this is your trusty Google advisor telling you this, that the reason they wanted the 14th Amendment and the reason why they had to define a citizen is because they didn't know what to do with these slaves that they released. So let's see what the 14th Amendment says. Let's see what they decide to do with the slaves. And the 14th Amendment defines what a citizen is. It says, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States." If we take a look at what a subject is, it's one that is placed under authority or control, such as vassal, one subject to a monarch and governed by the monarch's law, one who lives in the territory of, enjoys the protection of, and owes allegiance to a sovereign power or state. A subject. These people set it up so that they say, now we own you. Now you may be wondering, how is it possible that you're a subject if you're also a people? And the law says the people, or sovereign, are not bound by general word and statutes, restrictive of prerogative right, title, interest, unless expressly named. Acts of limitation do not bind the king or the people. The people have been ceded all the rights of the king, the former sovereign. How is it possible that you have all the rights of the king and you're sovereign, but you're also a subject? If it's true that the people's rights are not derived from the government, but the government's authority comes from the people, how is it possible that you, as one of the people, are subject to the authority of the government? So if the people are sovereign, how is it possible that the people are also subject? Well, the fact is, the people are not subject. It's the persons. In the 14th Amendment, they created an artificial person known as a U.S. citizen. And let's look at this case law real quick. Inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction, and a creature of the mind only, a government can interface only with other artificial persons, the imaginary, having neither actuality nor substance, is foreclosed from creating and attaining parity with the tangible. The legal manifestation of this is that no government, as well as any law, agency, aspect, court, etc., can concern itself with anything other than corporate, artificial persons and the contracts between them. The government does not exist in the real world. It only is fabricated in people's minds. It can only deal with artificial persons, and that's what they created here, an artificial person known as a U.S. citizen. The blacks were never made free. The whites were just made slaves. Every time the government says it's doing something, you better believe it's doing the exact opposite.